Hi, I'm Jeffrey Shaw, author of Sell to the Rich. Happiness is coming home to yourself, that true happiness. When you feel authentic, when you feel aligned with your life and comfortable in your own skin.
Ooh, I love that, Jeffrey. That's so powerful. So powerful. So with that, where how do you get to that point? How do you get to that happiness?
Yeah. Well, the fact that you asked the question, my first thought, honestly, Phil, was there's so many directions you can go in, right? There's so what makes you happy. I mean, thankfully, when we have found our way to happiness, a lot can make us happy. So it becomes a challenge. But here's how I really answer the question. I thought about times in my life when I was very unhappy, when I felt challenging times. So what is the opposite of that? And I realized what unhappiness looks like. Unhappiness looks like when you're not comfortable in your own skin. Unhappiness
Mm,
looks like when you feel completely misaligned. And for me, what I've learned for myself for the last few years, that truly happiness is a feeling of coming home. When you just have all that just coming home element, when you've returned, because that's the challenge in life, right? So much of everything gets covered up on top of us. I was at a speaking gig this past Monday, and probably my favorite line in the entire presentation was, "You don't earn the right to deserve more. You uncover the courage to claim it."
ooh,
And that to me is what coming home feels like, right? It's just this courage to reclaim your your sense of home, your happiness. And it's a journey initiated by the most challenging times we might face. And that's a hard thing to understand when you're in the thick of it.
yeah.
But hopefully that's what your show is all about, is to give people an awareness of when you're in the thick of it, when you're at a difficult time, happiness will come again as you uncover the courage to reclaim your happiness.
I love that. That's beautiful, Jeffrey. Thank you. That's really good. So with that, your book has a lot about some mindset here, which I want to talk about. That's the
Always.
key that I want to talk about. So let's talk about that. So first of all, what the heck is a luxury mindset?
Hmm. This is again a little background on me, having been in the luxury space for 40 years. I was a portrait photographer for some of the wealthiest families in the United States. Didn't come from this world at all. Again, sort of like we were talking a moment ago. Like, I think some of our deepest learnings come from contrast. So for me, the contrast of my life was I grew up very lower middle class and ended up serving the wealthiest people in the United States. So the contrast of that really taught me a different perspective on what luxury is. Uh, and it continues to evolve. And I think a luxury has evolved a lot in the last couple of years, because you know what, you and I both know, time is a luxury.
Yeah.
So luxury is not just relegated. And I kind of live in both worlds as a professional consultant and speaker today. In that, uh, yeah, I do work in the luxury space, consulting luxury brands. I work with luxury service and goods businesses. I speak at luxury events. So, as I say with my book, Sell to the Rich, which is right here, by the way. Um, as I said, I explain that book by saying it has a purpose and a mission. The purpose is to deliver the information I think those in the luxury space need to understand from a more intimate perspective of luxury buyers, which was my world as a photographer. As I like to say, I don't just know this clientele, I was in their closets. So my purpose is to help those in the luxury space do better, understand their luxury clients better, connect better. The mission of my work is, I imagine a world where every business, luxury or not, treats their clients in a way that their clients have a luxury experience. That business becomes the reprieve from life. You know, when calling your cable company is no longer a nightmare, but actually maybe something that makes your day better that day.
Wow.
So, luxury to me are moments. Luxury is about understanding people. Yes, luxury is fine goods. Luxury is an expensive experience, a rare experience. but it's also much broader than that. Nowadays, luxury is time. Luxury is a moment with loved ones. Luxury is that moment when you connect with a stranger. So, um, yeah, so that's what luxury is to me today, and it continues to broaden, I think. It's a quality of
Wow.
life.
I like that. I like that. I think that's an opportunity for all of us to provide some luxury in every experience that we have, regardless of whether or not it's whether we're the service provider or just someone that's having a conversation with someone.
Yeah, yeah. The way I explain it to businesses, I don't know that you'll have much choice. Great isn't good enough nowadays. Consumers' standards have been so greatly elevated. Again, whether you're in the luxury space or not, let's take a look at Amazon. Amazon has retrained the world of thinking around time. People no longer have, I don't, and again, this is one of the things I consult with on very high end luxury brands. I'm like, I get that you want to maintain quality. You should maintain quality. And your customers today also want it in a reasonable period of time. Now, having been a photographer for 40 years back in the day, all my frames for my portraits were hand carved 22 karat gold frames. I worked with individual frame makers and they took time. They used to take 8 to 12 weeks to make a single frame. But as the years of business went on, I had to make it very clear to my vendors like, look, that just doesn't suit today's buyers. They want the same quality and they want it in 3 weeks. I'm having a really hard time asking people to wait 12 weeks for a frame. The portraits have been done in 6 weeks, right? So that's Amazon as a completely, although we could say Amazon's a luxury company in some ways because they've made our lives a lot easier. It's not high end, right? But they've retrained time. So, I think that's something that I like to work with businesses on both ends of the spectrum to get that. I like to work with businesses that are not traditional luxury businesses to help them look at luxury brands and what can they learn. And I like to look at luxury brands and say, well, now look at non-luxury brands and what can you learn? That cross innovation offers a lot.
Yeah, sure does. Well, you talk about the Amazonification of stuff. I mean, we want it now. That's an unreasonable time
Yeah,
in a
it
lot of
is.
cases,
And it
and
is
yet it
unreasonable.
happens. And yet it
Yes.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, I had a situation a couple months ago where I tested something. The same day I ordered a product, US made from a company. And then I ordered not the same, but also a handmade product from a company in Italy. And just I was curious to see what would happen. Well, I got the handmade custom item from Italy in 5 days. Handmade, crafted, DHL sent to me, and I had it in 5 days. It took 2 weeks to get the item made right here in the US. Now, that's not a criticism of US manufacturers. It's just one company woke up to a reality and another company didn't.
Wow.
Right. So guess who I continue to do business with? I mean, it's not hard to figure out. Right. But
Yeah.
that's, so and it's again handcrafted item. They maintain their quality. They just have changed their systems in a way that they can deliver happiness quicker.
Wow. That's really cool. That's really cool. So with that, give me an example of how a consultant can deliver some luxury in a way that maybe is a little bit unexpected.
Yeah. Here's the beautiful thing, Phil. I think a lot of gestures and things that we can do cost probably nothing or very little. It's the meaning behind it. And this is true in the highest end luxury brands, as well as you said, what consultants can do. What are the thoughtful things that you can do for your clients? One of the questions I get asked all the time from at speaking gigs, in fact, it just came up this past Monday at an event where somebody asked me, well, when we have a broad client base and even as consultants, it's broad enough that you've got different personalities. So, how do we scale? How do we operate at scale and make people feel individual? So for one, it's technology. I've been saying for decades that technology, particularly as this continues to accelerate, right? Whether it was, the invention of email way back when to AI now, technology has always been available to either make our businesses more personal or less personal. We can let technology come between us and our clients, or we could use it to free up the space, create systems that create consistency, which feels really good to your customers. Or and it can free up space so that technology is taking care of parts of your business so that you can spend more time with your clients and in relationship to them. So, one is create systems in your business where you can consistently communicate with your clients. Actually, a client of mine, a coaching client of mine, who's a bookkeeper, just said to me yesterday that she was getting some feedback from her clients that they love her so much, but when she gets busy, she seems to drift away a little bit. Like they don't hear as much from her because, of course, she's busy. Right. So I said, well, you have to figure out how to implement consistent communication with your clients if that's where they find comfort. Same thing with social media. We see this all the time with consultants and business owners. They go headstrong into social media for a little while and then they fall off the bandwagon and they get inconsistent. So you need systems within yourself, right? So you have a weekly or a daily to-do reminder. You hire people to keep you consistent, or you build systems to be consistent. But one thing I would say to a consultant is consistent relationship, things that you do to make sure your customers feel taken care of all the time. It's really easy. It's one of the biggest challenges for business owners that when we're busy, we've kind of fall off the bandwagon of doing things that got us busy, the marketing. We become less communicative with our clients. And my feeling is, I think an important lesson is always be at your best when you have the maximum amount of eyeballs on you, right? So when your business is doing well, when you've got the maximum number of clients, when you're getting traction in your business, don't take your foot off the pedal then because you're actually gaining the most amount of attention for which that can build momentum on.
So how do we balance that though, Jeffrey? How do we balance the need to do just as much when we're busy? I mean, is that the time that you mentioned systems, you
Yeah.
mentioned hiring someone. I mean, what do we really have to do here to make sure that we don't take the foot off the gas?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, because I'm so respectful of what it takes to own and run a business, I don't throw out delegating and hiring people as quickly as a lot of coaches do, like, because it's just not always realistic. So I always try to suggest, well, what are the solutions? Um, it's consistency, and it's setting up patterns and discipline for yourself. And I don't mean discipline in a negative way, right? Because you and I both share the belief, like, this is not about hustle. It's about happiness. We're not trying to
No,
encourage
that's
anybody to
right.
hustle. And that's the point. Again, again, to give a little more background here, I've been self-employed my entire life. I've never had a traditional job. I've never received a paycheck. So this has been my world all along. And I don't want to fall victim to the hustle mentality. And sure, there are times in my life that I have, but that's not today's day and age. That's just not how anybody should be living nowadays, because we know life is precious. So it's discipline, but not in a negative way. I've laid out, like, what do I act really effective to-do lists, right? And again, a to-do list to me I use a digital to-do list, one that I don't, I understand what needs to get done, but I don't do it with such pressure that it has to get done on Monday or Tuesday. It needs to get done that week, right? So some things need to get done on that day, but a little flexibility so that you're giving yourself moments of spontaneity, moments of, hey, I just don't feel like doing that much today. And you can slide it a little bit. So to me, one of the core lessons I've continued to try to help business owners understand is we almost all go into business thinking that being self-employed is going to give us freedom. The myth of self-employment is we become self-employed and we're like, yeah, well, so much for that freedom thing. Right? I mean, it's such a myth.
Right.
But here's how you get your freedom from discipline and systems. And it seems paradoxical because freedom so often implies just winging it and being free. And you've written books. It's how I always say about writing a book too. It's like a book doesn't get written by inspiration, it gets written by discipline. It gets
Yeah.
written by sitting down 2 hours every day for as many months as it takes to get the book written. That's what it's like to really run a business. Just have the disciplines in place so that you turn around and realize, oh, my tasks are complete. I think I'll take the afternoon off. And one of the things I say in my previous book, The Self-Employed Life, about this is that business owners should strive to be bored. And I know that's the complete antithesis of this hustle mentality, but that to me is happiness. Strive to be bored, meaning Create space for yourself and see what you want to do with that space. In that space, opportunities will come, or in that space, you will decide to do something that makes you happy. But put the systems in place, have the discipline, get done what needs to get done in the most efficient way possible, create space for yourself, and see what you want to do with it, because that is happiness.
Yeah. Doing what you want to do when you want to do it is absolutely happiness. And I think that's a
Yeah,
good reminder to folks.
yeah,
So with that, let's pivot. Let's talk a little bit more about the book, Jeffrey. Let's talk about
sure.
luxury branding, because
Mhm.
I think that that's something that I think a lot of people miss. They just, they go with the cheapest website or the cheapest logo, and they're like, okay, well, I'm branded. Here we go. I'm done. But branding is so much more than logo and website. So talk to me a little bit about branding, Jeffrey, and why luxury branding is different
Yeah,
than regular branding.
yeah. Great opportunity to talk about this. So, branding is often thought about the look or the messaging. Unfortunately, a lot of times people overlook the messaging. To me, the messaging is far more important than even the look. Um, but together, it's a vibe. And I wish people associated branding more with a vibe. And that is really important in luxury. One of the things I say in my keynote, Sell to the Rich, in fact, the very first slide that comes up is that it says, when money isn't an issue, everything else is. And it's such a powerful lesson for everybody to learn, in luxury space or not, because when you're dealing with people where money isn't an issue, everything else is over exaggerated. The emotions it takes to grab their attention, the uniqueness of what you have to offer to grab their attention. But here's the thing, even if you're not in a luxury space, these are also strategies to get money off the table. So if you find yourself defending your prices, working with a clientele that is debating your prices, elevating everything else is a way of removing money from the table. Make everything else more important. Money should not be, particularly for coaches, consultants, money should not be the biggest deciding factor as to whether your clients engage your services. If your services, and you're confident that your services are going to make an impactful difference in somebody's life, we have to help them get money off the table. As long as you are authentic, genuine, and you truly believe what you have to offer is going to impact their lives in a positive way, get money off the table. We do that by elevating everything else. So to me, branding is a vibe. So luxury, for example, when people land on your website, it's all of the above. It is the look, it's the ease at which it loads, it's the flow of it. It is most definitely the messaging. Are you speaking the lingo? To reference my first book called Lingo, are you speaking the lingo of your specific ideal client, so that they land there and the whole thing is a vibe? You actually don't want them to identify. It's sort of like cologne, right? When somebody says to you, you smell nice, that's a compliment. When somebody says your cologne smells nice, you're wearing too much. So same thing with like a website. If I like it better when people can't identify why they're moved by your website. They're like, I don't know, I just felt it. Like I just felt like you were the one for me. I just felt like you were the coach or the consultant that I should work with. That means you've created a vibe in your branding. So it is all of the above. Nothing but perfection is acceptable. It's the look, it's the color choices, it's the logo, it's the messaging, it's speaking the lingo of the clients, it's the flow and ease. Um, if you're a consultant or a business that has a high energy vibe, then your website should feel that way. If your goal as a consultant is to put people at rest, to calm their nerves, then your website should feel that way. Collectively, branding is a vibe. And that's what I think people have to step back and ask themselves, do I feel the vibe that my ideal clients feel when they look at my branding?
Wow. Wow. So that's very different than how a lot of people define brand. And I like that. I like the fact that you talk about it as a vibe. It's collective, it's all of the above, and it
Yeah.
is a feeling. It is a feeling that you can give people with that. So I think that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the philosophy. Let's talk about some of the ways of the luxury market that people haven't thought about as we kind of wrap up here.
Yeah.
What are some other philosophies, Jeffrey, that people need to understand so that they can really get inside the head of the luxury buyer?
Yeah. So the luxury buyer is extremely complex. Probably the biggest surprise, and I was asked this by a wonderful friend of mine who asked me one time before my book came out. She asked me, she goes, "What's the biggest surprise in the book?" Great question. And I told her, I said, I think the biggest surprise is that when people are entering into the luxury space, it's easy to assume the luxury buyer might, from the outside, might appear to be materialistic and maybe more shallow. It's the complete opposite. Luxury buyers are the most intuitive, perceptive buyers you will ever work with. I've 40 years in this space. I don't know that I have an exact reason why, because on one hand, I can look at it and say, well, obviously they've had to become really perceptive as to who's after them for their money, who's, genuine and authentic, because their radar has to be up, because when you have money, you're a target. That's possible. And I will also say that it's so many of the luxury buyers I've worked with that they have an innate perception. I actually think that's what made them successful, right? A lot of my clients were Wall Street people. Their ability to be perceptive of the market is what made them successful. So I think perception is an unspoken characteristic of a success. So when you're working with highly successful people, AKA likely to be luxury buyers, their perceptiveness is just innate to who they are. You have to understand that because they are reading everything about you. You're never going to get away with, as we say here in the South, I live in Florida. I'm not a Southerner, but from Florida, bless your heart. You know, you're never going to get away with saying anything that you think is coming out different than it's actually coming out. Like, your clients read you. So that's one thing I think everyone needs to understand when you're the luxury, whether you're already in that luxury space or entering it. You need to understand your clients are highly perceptive. You had better be clean energy, as I refer to it. You got to be clean in your integrity, clean in your honesty. The words that come out of your mouth have to be authentic, and you can't use any sleazy sales techniques. They won't have it. So that, and the other part of them being complex is they can be very paradoxical, very contradictory. Um, yes, they may live very formal lives, but they love moments of casualness. All right. Same thing. Like, I like to make the comparison to a Broadway show. They want the best tickets in the house, and they want backstage passes to meet the performers. Same thing at a restaurant. They want the finest dining experience, and they want the behind the scenes tour of the kitchen. So their behavior can seem really paradoxical to the point where sometimes as a provider, you don't know where you stand with them. So you have to be really highly attuned. And lastly, Phil, the last thing I'll offer you is, and this comes straight from the mindset of a photographer photographing these folks for 40 years, their cues are subtle. They may seem not expressive, but oh boy, they're saying a lot, right? And as a photographer, I had to really quickly pick up on family dynamics, who in the family got along better than others, what was the relationship, mom and dad, and it was all the subtle cues. It was how they walked around each other. It was the hand gestures. It was the light touch a husband might pass on his wife as he walked by her or not, right? So I had to pick all this up before I even began photographing. That has served me best in sales and marketing in the luxury market than anything, because it's the subtle cues. They tend to not be overly verbally expressive, but their actions are incredibly expressive if you pay attention.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to think about and a lot to pay attention to. You mentioned that perception. So as we wrap up here, Jeffrey, how do we get started selling luxury into the luxury market, being more luxurious with our business?
How do you get, honestly, it starts with you. And that's why, as you mentioned, there's a lot of mindset in the work that I do. Because, as a photographer for these families for many years, I did not photograph weddings. So I was constantly inundated with upscale wedding photographers wanting to align with me to see if they could become a source of referral. And I had to explain so much to them. First of all, I had to explain to them that in the luxury market, weddings are just not that big of a deal. Okay. I hate to be crass about it, but
Wow.
I mean, it's not the first time they've worn a white dress. They were probably debutantes. They're in a limousine every weekend to go into New York City to go to the theater. Like, nothing about most things that everybody else elevates to a big deal, big party, the white dress. They've done all this. Like, so the actual wedding is not the biggest deal. The marriage and the love hopefully is, and typically is. But that's what they focus on, right? So first of all, their weddings are not the biggest deal, so it's not likely to be where they put the most amount of money. So there's one thing I had to wake them up to. But I would say, Phil, 99% of the photographers that approached me, they just didn't have that it factor. I could pick up on it right away. They came across as, oh, I want to work with this market because it appears the roads are paved with gold. And if you're carrying that energy, that's exactly what repels the highly perceptive luxury buyer. So your start begins with you. So one thing I end my keynotes with this, and this is how I'll leave your listeners. I refer to it as the diamond edge. You need to know your diamond edge. Your diamond edge is the reason you want to serve this clientele that's bigger than the money. You have to know that in order to even enter the luxury space in a clean energy way. Because if you in any way think that you're entering this market because it seems advantageous financially, it won't work. You have to figure out what is your reason for wanting to serve this discerning, demanding clientele that's bigger than the money and bigger than keeping up with their demands. Start with that. The beautiful thing is, if you start with that, you work in integrity, you're authentic, you operate in clean energy to make sure your clients know that you're authentic, you will be significantly financially rewarded. That just can't be the goal coming out of the gate.
Ooh, I love that. That's a great way to end us up here. And folks, if you want to get more from Jeffrey Shaw, you want to get his book, go to jeffreyshaw.com, JEFFREYSHAW.com. Check him out. And Jeff, if there's one place that people could connect with you more, if there's a social media platform that you're active on, where would that be?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn. I also have a newsletter called Diamond Edge. Highly recommend, even if you're not in the luxury space, sign up for that newsletter because it is a weekly newsletter. It's the best content I put out in the world. Anything in there that is relative to luxury marketing and sales, I bet you can apply it to almost any business you're in. So LinkedIn, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeffrey. This is great stuff. I really appreciate you. Thanks for sharing your diamond edge with us.